Good evening, everyone. I'm Alan Fisher. On this episode of AZ Illustrated Science, we continue the conversation started last night on AZ Illustrated Nature about how natural and artificial lighting can dramatically affect our bodies and the world around us. Also, why we need our 8 hours of nightly shut-eye, and helping first responders deal with the stress of their jobs. But first, here's a look at today's top stories.
The Arizona Republican Party is asking U.S. House Speaker John Boehner to look into a mailer Congressman Ron Barber sent to constituents. Barber, a Democrat, sent a flyer to people who live in his district with messages about his stance on proposed changes to Medicare, Social Security, and the Affordable Care Act, something Republicans say is political campaign material because it goes beyond a status update. Barber's office spokesman says the flyer is no different from those other members of Congress typically send. The flyer was approved by the Bipartisan Franking Commission, which is the congressional committee that makes sure taxpayer dollars are not spent on political campaigns. A B-52G bomber will be destroyed this week in Tucson. The aircraft is the last of a group of B-52G bombers scheduled to be destroyed as part of a treaty with Russia. The tail will be sawed off the aircraft, which is at the boneyard of the former military airplanes in Tucson. In order to eliminate some of the bombers was part of a treaty the U.S. signed with Russia in 2011. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Last night on AZ Illustrated Nature, we heard from author Paul Bogard about his search for natural darkness in our modern age of artificial light and the effects of light on the environment. In this next story about the power of light, we think more about that conversation and how artificial light can affect us.
According to author Paul Bogard, we live in a world that is saturated with artificial light.
All the light in the sky is robbing us of those experiences of a night sky and a true darkness.
And come to find out, darkness, true darkness, is necessary for our health. Too much light, for example, disrupts our natural circadian rhythms, that cycle of waking and sleeping. Such is especially the case for night shift workers. Light can also affect the circadian rhythms of nocturnal animals and insects and disrupt their ability to hunt, reproduce, compete with one another, and navigate their surroundings. Arturo Chavez is very familiar with the power of light. He works at NP Photonics, a company that produces lasers along with light amplifiers.
Those are light sources that can increase the light power from very low power to very high power, to tens of watts of power.
In its concentrated form, artificially produced light, like that in lasers, can be very powerful.
And then that light can be focused to a piece, let's say for a micro machining application, or it can be used in free space to propagate signals. We have some potential for a laser satellite communication, where the light goes to space and also comes back.
Artificial light, however, does not have to be concentrated to change the world around us.
Currently, we're looking at the use of LED lights to using as supplemental lighting for plant growth.
Without enough light, of course, plants wither and die.
Most places in the world don't have enough light, especially during the winter, to grow a full mature crop.
But plants do respond to artificial light, so people use it to grow crops.
So they use technology called high-pressure sodium lamps, like stadium lamps. These lamps work great, however, they have mercury vapor, and they're non-safe to dispose. Also, they draw a lot of energy.
For those reasons, Hernandez is studying the effects of LED lights on plant growth. LEDs consume less power, and they do not contain those same harmful chemicals. His work shows that not only does light affect plants, the color of light matters too.
The plants respond to a variety of colors, right? And for growth, for photosynthesis, they mainly use red and blue. They use other colors such as UV and far red for morphogenesis, or plant morphology. how the plant looks under different wavelengths.
Hernandez creates different color blends, something that is possible with LEDs to track different results.
For example, if you want a plant to develop quicker or put a first flower quicker, we can use a specific color to do that. If you want a plant to have wider leaves, for example, you want wider leaves on lettuce, we can use fat red color to make those leaves wider.
But if light color can have such dramatic impacts on plant morphology, what does it do to our bodies? In this age of high-tech gadgetry, we are increasingly exposed to blue light around the clock, from sources like computers, television sets, and indoor and outdoor lighting. Indeed, scientists are discovering that our bodies are really sensitive to blue light, which can slow the production of melatonin, a hormone we only produce when it is dark. And melatonin is now being linked to reproduction, mood, sleep, and even cancer. So yes, our bodies do respond to light and light color, whether we know it or not. Indeed, light has implications for life itself. And new understandings of light suggest that it is important for all of us to spend time in the dark, and maybe even rethink our relationship to darkness.
The joy and beauty of night and natural darkness and how important it is for us.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being true darkness, most of us live in places with light levels of 5 or above. But it is still possible to find true darkness. The National Park Service, for example, now considers darkness to be a natural resource, one that needs conserving. And our national parks especially provide opportunities for escaping from artificial light, offering a chance to see true darkness in all its brilliance.
Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks, it's my pleasure.
So, according to the National Sleep Foundation, 64% of Americans have problems with sleep disorders. That's a really large number.
It's a large number. It's an epidemic. I think any way you cut it, it's the #1 health concern in the U.S. and other developed countries around the world today.
I have to admit, I was surprised at how large that number is. So, what's going on?
One of the reasons people are surprised, first of all, is it's undercover. There's something, sleep disorders happen at night, and by the time we get up in the morning and we down a few cups of coffee and get excited about the day, it gets swept under the rug. But over time, it's corrosive. It has a very detrimental impact on our health. There's no question that sleep stands with 3 other major pillars for health. It's as important as nutrition and exercise and managing stress. And I think there's a growing awareness about this today, but the problem is that despite all this focus of research, medical focus, the problem is not improving. There's something in the way we're addressing it that's just not working.
Well, interesting that you say it's one of the 3 pillars, because I think so often we realize, okay, we can't go without food, right? We can't go without some of these other things, but we tend to think that, I can skip sleep tonight, it's fine, I need to work late, I'll just drink extra caffeine.
Right. It's seen as almost incidental, but I think over time, people with serious sleep problems, with chronic sleep problems, really begin to feel it. And of course, when they speak to their physicians about it, the chances are they're going to get a sleeping pill. The data on the effectiveness of sleeping pills is really dismal. I mean, this is really hard, meta-analytical, broad spectrum studies show that they don't work. They really don't work. In the short run, they'll patch you up, but in the long run, you pay a pretty serious price for that.
So let's talk about what's going on here then, because as you say, of course, illness, stress, all of these factors do play into problems with sleep, but you suggest that it's something bigger than that.
Yeah, well, when we talk about sleep problems, we're talking primarily now about insomnia, sleeplessness, and there are a number of others. Most people believe that they can't sleep at night because they're just not sleepy enough. And the deeper truth is they can't sleep because they're too wakeful, something we call hyperarousal. And this relates to our perspective, our beliefs about consciousness. So, we see waking as the gold standard for consciousness. You and I, we're awake now, people watching this are awake, and this is where it's at. And we look at sleeping and dreaming and sort of secondary states of consciousness that are there to serve waking life. We think about sleep as being valuable only in terms of how it improves our health and our memory and our appearance and performance, which it does, absolutely.
Right, I need to get a good night's sleep tonight because I've got a long day at work tomorrow.
And we look at dreaming as being incidental, and when we turn to dreams, we really try to juice the dreams to give us information about waking life. So, and again, I'm not saying this isn't interesting and useful, but we're losing something. We lose something in the mix, and that's that sleeping and dreaming are inherently valuable. I often talk to patients, and I think this is an important part of treating sleeplessness. I talk to them about falling back in love with sleep. And I think as kids, we all had a love affair with sleep. And as adults, it's something we try to dominate and manage and control. That attitude is what gets us in trouble in the first place.
Right. Well, and of course, the way we sleep and the times we sleep and how we sleep, all of that has changed significantly even in the last, 100 years.
Right. You know, sleep is often seen as something we subtract from life. It's something we'd rather not do. I really believe that sleeping and dreaming take us deeper into life. It's not a respite from, but it's a part of life that we need to connect with.
So you talk about helping people to find healthy sleep, sleep that is both deep and green. What do you mean by that?
So I see sleep also as a conversation between the individual and the environment. And we want to go deep internally. So from a brainwave perspective, sleep slows us down and we go through beta waking waves down to alpha and eventually down to theta and delta waves, which is really deep sleep. It's a descent into what I call the sea of sleeping. We want to get to the bottom of those waters. And that depends a whole lot on our relationship with the environment. So I talk about green sleep. We want to sleep in a place, in a bedroom, in a bed, in an environment that doesn't tether us to the waking world. So many of us are tied to the waking world. It's like trying to dive into the sea of sleep, but we got a bungee cord attached to our ankle. And so things like background light, temperature, the quality of the air in the room we sleep in. So we want green, we want healthy, we want organic, we want natural. We want things that won't tie us to the waking world.
So what about somebody they've done all of this, they're laying in bed and they're tossing and turning and not able to go to sleep? Mm-hmm. We think of that as something very negative.
Right. Well, it depends. You know, some nighttime wakefulness is actually normal. And the way we've segregated consciousness in our world, most of us have come to believe that the presence of any waking in the middle of sleep is a problem. It's pathological. And people react to that. They throw expletives at it when they wake up at night. The truth is that I really believe that we are always, to varying degrees, awake, asleep, and dreaming. It's like the three primary colors can make up an infinite spectrum of colors. Those three kinds of consciousness mix together in varying proportions to create the experience of life. So a little bit of wakefulness is actually normal. Even some wakefulness in the middle of the night is shown to be normal. Also a little bit of sleepiness during the day. It's interesting, when sleep shows up during the day, we tend to go to war with it. When it doesn't show up at night, we tend to beg it to come back. I think the way we relate to sleep during the day, so people get sleepy during the day, a lot of them fight it. They'll curse at it, they'll throw coffee at it, they'll nibble on the inside of the cheek, anything to stay awake. And so I think we need to develop a more loving relationship with sleep.
It sounds great to me. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you, Georgia.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, heads of the country's leading tech companies visit the White House to discuss NSA surveillance with the president. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
If you're used to the single voice in most audiobooks, you might be surprised at the lavish productions of some of the new ones, like Civil War from Marvel Comics.
Energy tingled across his skin, dancing along the millimeter-thick sheath covering his body. Wireless sensors reached out.
I'm David Green, a new kind of audiobook on the next morning edition from NPR News.
To tell us more about the effects of light and sleep on the human body is pulmonologist and sleep doctor Ives de Chazal from the Pulmonary Associates of Southern Arizona. Ives, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
What effect does light have on sleep?
Light has a very significant role in sleep. The circadian rhythm is like a clock that our body has that tells us when to go to sleep and when we can spontaneously wake up. That clock is usually triggered by a change in the melatonin level about 3 hours before we go to sleep, and then it starts peaking in the middle of the night. About 3 hours before we wake up, our temperature drops to the critical lowest level, and once that starts to rise spontaneously, that's when we wake up. Light can actually shift the sleep time either forward or backward. It depends if the exposure is before that low temperature or after that temperature. And some circadian sleep disorders may be related to the lack of light or an excess or an exposure to light at the wrong time.
And can the human body adapt for, say, people who are working the night shift and sleep during the day, or live in a location like Alaska where there's long periods of light and long periods of dark?
It's an interesting question. Yes, the human body can adapt to many things. In the case of a shift work, if the individual has enough time to adapt to that, they can learn certain tricks about avoidance of the light at the wrong time and exposure at the right time, so they can compensate for that shift in the circadian rhythm.
And for example, when that rhythm gets disrupted, can the body adapt or change itself to accommodate that?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, there are sleep circadian disorders that people may be unable to go to sleep at a desired time or wake up at the desired time. So those shifts, either forward or backwards, are disorders, and they are treatable. And light, actually, as you mentioned, plays a very important role in the treatment as well.
And how important is sleep to human health? I mean, for example, people who have trouble sleeping, what sort of disorders may they develop?
Sleep is a basic physiological necessity. There is many things that occur during sleep. We heal our bodies during sleep. There are many functions that occur. You had mentioned earlier about the potential hormonal changes that occur during sleep. And indeed, certain stages of sleep are very, very important to heal, and the production of certain vital hormones, like stage 3, for instance, is when we produce the growth hormone, and it is very important, in particular in early ages.
You mentioned level 3 or stage 3. How important is deep sleep, and what are the different levels of sleep that we have?
Excellent. So, we go through stages 1, 2, 3, and R, which is the dream stage. The stages 1 and 2 occur early on, and then we flip back and forth. Stage 3 is very important to heal, as I mentioned, and stage dream is actually very interesting. Some earlier authors have called this a stage as the paradoxical sleep, because this is in a moment in our brain is extremely active and our bodies are paralyzed. And yes, there are certain disorders of sleep disorders that can actually shorten or prevent our entrance in one of these stages and have significant negative consequences.
You mentioned the dream state. Is that the REM state? And excuse me, how important is that to your health?
It is very important. We can actually dream in other stages as well. The stage R is common for that. As I said, it is a respiratory stage for sleep. When individuals miss that stage, they actually have a very poor quality of sleep, and oftentimes consequences as significant sleepiness during the day.
And we have about a minute left. You are a pulmonologist. How does pulmonology relate to sleep disorders?
Quite a bit. Probably the most common sleep disorders, aside of insomnia, are the sleep breathing disorders. Obviously, a lot of people are well aware with sleep apnea, for instance. And the prevalence is actually quite high, somewhere between 5 to 15% in the American population. And it has very negative effects on health, including potentially increases in mortality if this is not treated, and correlations with other disorders such as heart disease, heart failure, for instance. 20 to 30% or even 40% of individuals may have sleep disorders. Interestingly, in children also, that they may have problems of behavioral disorders. They are actually maybe labeled as deficit disorders. They may be actually a sign of a sleep disorder breathing in those children, and obviously the treatment would be very different.
Well, Ives, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
For an extended version of this interview, please visit our website at azpm.org. Work-related stress can lead to wakeful nights, and that's for those of us with relatively normal jobs. What about first responders? We count on them when we need help, and sometimes they need help. The Tucson Fire Department is teaming up with researchers to ease the stress firefighters face in the line of duty. Gisela Tellus has the story.
Every year, the Tucson Fire Department responds to an average of 80,000 calls for help. There are fires and car accidents, medical emergencies, and so-called code arrests in which firefighters work to save the life of someone whose heart has stopped. Each call carries great responsibility, says Tucson Fire Health and Safety Captain John Galata.
Tucson Fire Department goes and processes almost 1,000 code arrests a year. That's 1,000 families that we deal with, 1,000 lives that we see, whether we do something for them or not, anywhere from a newborn to a 100-year-old person. So there's that range that we deal with on a daily basis. And that's not including pediatric child abuse, it's not including the adult abuse, it's not including the traumatic events that we see, patients that are burned.
The calls can take an emotional toll, and that's why many police and fire departments use crisis interventions to help their workers cope. One of the most common interventions is Critical Incident Stress Management, or CISM. It's a highly structured system developed to help people recover from emotionally traumatic events. Although it's sometimes used one-on-one, it often includes group discussions called debriefings to go over the traumatic event. Tucson Fire paramedic Kevin Chafee came to know and train in CISM on the job and has seen its benefits firsthand.
My very first call that I ever went on as a brand new EMT was a pediatric drowning. And I had the ability to experience the effects of CISM. At that point in my brand new career, it was all new to me, and I did find it very helpful to go through it.
Over 13 years as a firefighter, Chafee has seen more than his share of emotional trauma, but one event changed his life and his understanding of how to respond to a crisis.
Last July, my best friend, and almost like a little brother to me, was killed. He had a huge support group. I mean, you know, the amount of friends and coworkers that he had were second to none. He was a very well-known individual. He was a teacher at Pima. He was a member of the Nogales Fire Department. I mean, there was so many areas of Tucson that his name reached out to. It was a huge network of people that needed help, and we utilized CISM initially to help us get through that.
Chafee says the CISM team followed the program's protocol, including a debriefing and some suggestions for self-care. But seeing how rigid CISM could be changed Chafee's perspective on the practice.
When you have a group of firefighters who are used to hanging out on their own on their days off and barbecuing and you know, having a couple beers, watching a football game on Sunday, and you tell them, hey, you should avoid those things that you usually do to decompress and make things right in your own mind again, that doesn't go over well with most of the firefighters from Nogales, and for most of his friends for that matter. So we had to take things down a different road.
Not everybody that wants to be on post is like you guys, right?
That different road has led Chafee, Galata, and the rest of the Tucson Fire Department to develop their own alternative to CISM. It's called the Pier Operational Support Team, or POST, and it has grown from a partnership with University of Arizona researchers, including psychologist Patricia Haynes.
It's a peer system where fellow firefighters go and talk with their peers who've gone through really tough calls. And the whole purpose in the short term is to really just promote calming.
The trained firefighters who make up posts talk to their peers one-on-one and help them find ways to decompress, whether it's by calling their families or taking a day off. They make themselves available, but let the natural recovery process unfold, checking in periodically to catch problems as they arise.
Where we really emphasize the majority of our intervention is 30 days after the really difficult call. That's when we actually go in and do a formalized risk assessment for PTSD and depression, so that those individuals who haven't gone through a natural recovery, those individuals that have gotten stuck, can be identified and we can help them.
POST's informal, individualized approach differs from CISM's, and it's gradually gaining favor in certain circles. Some studies have suggested that CISM's group debriefings have the potential to interfere with natural recovery. That has fueled controversy around the practice and led the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation and some fire departments to move away from CISM. Tom McSherry, a former firefighter EMT who has implemented CISM all over the country for high-profile disasters including 9/11 and the Yarnell Hill fire, says he stands by CISM, but he understands the impulse to try something different.
I've been doing this since 1989, 1990, so a long time. I believe in it, I've seen its value, but I must say that I'm anxious still every time I do it, because I know that if misapplied, you can do harm. No different than if you drink too much water, you can end up in the hospital. In my experience, it has been a misapplied model. It's been the wrong group, or the wrong timing, or the wrong tool, and there was no reason to even do the intervention.
But McSherry cautions against throwing out all the tools CISM offers, because a single approach may not be enough when large-scale disasters strike.
One tool would not have worked for me at ground zero. One tool would not have worked for me at 2 weeks up in Prescott after the 19 were killed. I had individuals, I had small groups, we had large groups, we had families, we had victims, we had survivors, we had, and to be limited to just that one model would not have sufficed.
Firefighter Kevin Chafee agrees. As part of the team developing and testing POST, he sees himself drawing from CISM to simply offer his fellow firefighters another choice when their burden grows too heavy.
I feel that by doing what we're doing with POST and taking some of the best things from CISM and tailoring it into what we individually need on our fire department and for the fire service in general, I think that being part of that is a huge thing that is going to go on for the future of the fire department, and that's why I'm so passionate about being in this program.
That's our show. To post a comment on any of these stories or to keep up with the latest news, go online to our website at azpm.org. I'm Alan Fisher. Thanks for watching.